stories of the hour. The UK Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy has said that recognizing a Palestine state would not create one overnight and it must be part of the wider peace process. He further added that Prime Minister Keir Starmer will decide on the issue later today as UK seeks to keep the prospects of a two-state solution alive. A bipartisan US congressional delegation is visiting China for the first time since 2019, aiming to ease tensions between the two global powers. The group that is led by Representative Adam Smith met the Chinese Premier Li Guang in Beijing for talks on trade, defense and regional issues. The UN Security Council is set to hold an emergency meeting on 22nd September after 3 Russian aircraft violated Estonian airspace. Estonia's foreign ministry condemned the incident as a brazen breach of sovereignty. The Indian government warned that the new $100,000 H-1B visa fee could have humanitarian consequences, disrupting families. Meanwhile, the White House has clarified it will not apply to current visas or renewals. A US-China agreement will give ByteDance just one of the 7 board seats in TikTok's new US entity, with Americans holding the other 6, while control of the app's algorithm will not be under ByteDance. President Donald Trump facing a deadline set by Congress to shut down the app in US unless sold is pushing this deal to preserve TikTok's access to its $170 million US. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has organized a day of military training for civilians amidst new threats from US President Donald Trump and a massive American naval deployment of 7 ships, F-35 fighter jets and a nuclear submarine in the Caribbean. Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez accused Washington of waging an undeclared war. An Afghan defense official says that a deal to return control of Bagram Air Base to the United States is not possible after US President Donald Trump warned bad things would happen if it was not handed back to the American administration. The base was abandoned during the 2021 US withdrawal from Afghanistan. It remains at the center of tensions as Kabul rejects any renewed American presence. US President Donald Trump publicly urges the Justice Department to charge his political rivals, including Adam Schiff and Letitia James, accusing them of mortgage fraud. Donald Trump also fired a federal prosecutor who declined to bring charges and replaced him with a White House aide. The British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is expected to formally announce the recognition of Palestinian state in a statement today, marking a major shift in UK's foreign policy. Starmer had warned in July that unless Israel agreed to a ceasefire and committed to peace talks, Britain would move forward with recognition. Britain's Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy has defended the government's decision to recognize a Palestinian state. In an interview, David Lammy has acknowledged that while the move may not bring immediate change, establishing a Palestine state remains a just cause.
And I think a lot of that is wrapped up in hope. Will this feed children? No, it won't. That's down to humanitarian aid. Will this free hostages? That must be down to a ceasefire. But does this mean that you get or hold out for that two-state solution and stand by the Palestinian cause being a just cause? Well, that was the determination that I and the Prime Minister made at the end of July. But let's make a distinction between Hamas and the Palestinian people. And what do we say to the children of a future Palestinian state? Do we say we have to wait for the perfect conditions before we can recognise a Palestinian state? Or do we say, when we see the E1 development, the expansion plans the Israeli government now have in the West Bank, when we see the decision not to move towards a ceasefire, but instead to attack Qatar and set back that ceasefire, do we say to them, no, you cannot have that Palestinian state that is your dream? And I think that's the assessment, not just the UK, but France, Australia, Canada, Belgium are making at this time.
Meanwhile, Britons are split over the UK government's decision. Some say it's the right thing to do, while others state it is rewarding terrorists.
I don't think it's rewarding Hamas. I think it's acknowledging that there's a people here who are suffering the most awful genocide, and actually it's time for the rest of the world to say enough is enough and give them a place to call home.
I think in terms of the humanitarian crisis that's unfolding and just the state of world politics, absolutely, they should be given a state and recognised as such.
I think it's rewarding the terrorists myself. It's rewarding Hamas. I'm very sympathetic to the plight of the Palestinian people, but I don't think this is the way forward. I think it emboldens them and will only lead to further trouble on the world.
They're sort of abandoned in Israel, really, and and with the Hamas, you're almost sort of supporting them, and I don't think that's a good move, you know. That's my personal view. I think it's dangerous as well. Really, going to stir up more trouble than it probably means well, but I don't think it's a good move myself.
Matthew Adam is on the telecast with me. Matthew, thank you very much for joining me. And what are your reactions to London finally deciding to recognize Palestine? There is going to be a public announcement that is going to be made by the Prime Minister of Britain, Keir Starmer, later today.
Right. The United Kingdom is choosing to reward the Hamas government, the Hamas authorities in Palestine by saying that they're going to recognize a Palestinian state. The move is an attempt to pressure the government of Israel to wind down its war effort in Gaza, in Palestine, and it's political posturing, and I'm not surprised that the UK is doing this. They said some weeks ago that they were going to do this, and other leftist governments, like the government of Canada, have said they're also going to recognize the government of Palestine. I suspect that the decision in the United Kingdom is also driven by the fact that the Labour government is trying to placate its political base, which is hostile to Israel, and also they wish to appease their Muslim voters. They wish to appeal to Muslim voters because that's a lot of what Labour needs to stay in power. So, this is a
right. But there has been quite the clamor that has been created from Germany to France to other European nations that at this point of time are decisive in going ahead and recognizing Palestine, keeping in mind a two-state solution is something that was the foundation of ending the war between Israel and its hostile neighbors, particularly Hamas and other Arab nations that have also come out and always supported the two-state solution. There was at the UNGA, a vote that is also going to be had. It has been vetoed by America. It has been supported by a large number of countries from across the globe. Finally, do you think there is some glimmer of hope that will allow for peace to prevail?
I doubt it. I don't think so. This is just a feel-good measure that left-wing politicians are going through. I don't think it will lead to peace in Palestine at all, because the Palestinians have never been satisfied. They have been Yasser Arafat and other Palestinian leaders were previously offered their own Palestinian state, and they have over and over again rejected the offers that have come from Israel. So You know, why do we suddenly think that they're going to agree to do this, especially when they can continue getting sympathy from their
Yeah,
supporters
but then are we at this point
in
of
the
time
world?
looking at Palestinians as part of Hamas, or is there a distinction at this point of time, and always has been, that Palestinians are a bunch of people, are looking for their own state, looking for their own region to live peacefully with other nations that are on the border, which is Israel. Are Palestinians being equated to Hamas, unjustifiably?
Well, Palestinians are not Hamas exactly, but there is a significant overlap. The Palestinian people, they've done many opinion polls showing that Palestinian people were fine with with Hamas's terrorist attacks on Israel, starting with October 7th, 2023, when they attacked along the Israeli frontier and hit that music festival and killed many innocent people. The Palestinian people, I haven't seen any recent opinion polls, but up until at least a few months ago, the Palestinian people were solidly behind Hamas.
I mean, also, of course, there has been an independent UN commission, a body that has come out, and its findings said that there is a genocide that is being committed by Israel on the Palestinians. There have been thousands that have been dead because of that onslaught from the Israeli Defense Forces that does not seem to stop. Stay on with me. Also, meanwhile, there are Israeli nationals that are reacting to the calls of recognizing a Palestinian statehood. Yonatan Zigin, a former social worker whose mother, a prominent peace activist, Vivian Silva, was killed in the Hamas attack at Kibbutz Be'eri on 7th of October 2023. And this is what he had to say.
But this time, out of that helplessness, I felt a very deep sense of responsibility. And, this need to become engaged and to contribute whatever I can to change, into shaping our realities so that nobody would have to pay this kind of prices anymore from both sides. I see it as a new momentum that is a necessary first step, but it has to be backed with implementation. It has to carry weight.
Reluka Guinea, who is the co-founder and director of Zazim Community Action, has also spoken on the matter.
And we want to show the world leaders that there is a large Israeli public that is against the war, that supports peace, that is for a Palestinian state. Netanyahu and his government are trying to perceive everyone who are who are for a Palestinian state as anti-Semites and so on. And the Israeli voice is very important in this regard, because we know that you actually are in our favor when you suggest this program. And we know you're not anti-Semitists. On the contrary, it's the only way forward for both people.
Now, Pope Leo has condemned the forced exile of Palestinians during his prayer at the Vatican, calling for an end to the displacement of families in the region. His words come amidst the ongoing violence and instability in Gaza. The Pope urged for peace, justice and respect for human dignity, stressing the need for a solution that addresses both Israeli and Palestinian rights.
Mi rivolgo anzitutto ai rappresentanti di diverse associazioni cattoliche impegnate nella solidarietà con la popolazione della striscia di Gaza, che in tutta la Chiesa esprimono vicinanza ai fratelli e alle sorelle che soffrono in quella terra martoriata. Con voi e con i pastori delle chiese in Terra Santa, ripeto, Non c'è futuro basato sulla violenza, sull'esilio forzato, sulla vendetta. I popoli hanno bisogno di pace. Chi li ama veramente lavora per la.
A bipartisan group of U.S. lawmakers is visiting China, the first House delegation to do so since 2019. Led by Congressman Adam Smith, the group met Chinese Premier Li Qiang at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing on Sunday. Both sides are calling for improved ties after years of rising tensions over trade, tech, Taiwan and the South China Sea. Adam Smith says that both countries have work to do to strengthen their relationship.
I think we can both acknowledge that both China and the U.S. have work to do to strengthen that relationship. It should not be, 6 years between visits from the United States House of Representatives. I was pleased to meet with representatives of your people's Congress in Washington, D.C. just before I left. We need more of those types of exchanges, and we're hoping key words this will break the ice, and we'll begin to have more of these types of exchanges.
Li Qiang, the Chinese vice premier, echoed the sentiment calling for mutual respect and peaceful coexistence.
I assume and so more to you and your colleagues.
The visit follows a phone call between President Trump and Xi Jinping, signaling a diplomatic tour. Matthew Wadham stays with me on the telecast. Matthew, a complicated relationship that China and the United States share at this point of time, from almost finalizing the deal on TikTok. There have been renewed calls by the Trump administration pressuring the European Union to impose tariffs on China for buying Russian oil. And here we see an American trade representative arriving in China to hold talks with the Premier of China, of course, on a varied subjects, whether it is about technology, whether it is about trade, whether it is about South China Sea. How do you think the relationship between both countries is going to progress here on?
I think that it's a really delicate situation because China doesn't want massive tariffs imposed on its products. It doesn't want retaliation from the United States because they have communist China has a big economy that is really dependent that is strongly dependent upon U.S. purchases of their products. So China is going to, make efforts to accommodate the United States, but there's only so far they will go. I think the congressman you spoke of earlier, Congressman Adam Smith, Democrat from, I think he's from Washington State. He and the congressional delegation are visiting China on a goodwill mission, trying to keep the lines of communication open between the countries. I don't think that they have a goal necessarily.
Measures that NATO can, I think, easily undertake, and I'm really surprised they don't do that. Which, by the way, defeat the whole Russian argument that NATO is aggressive, that the entire aggression against Ukraine started for some provocation from NATO, which absolutely, is defeated by the fact that NATO does exactly the opposite. Even with those provocations, NATO is reluctant to escalate and to threaten.
Yeah. Also, this is going to then be interpreted as an act of war by Russia, and there perhaps could be a full-fledged war, which is going to be between NATO and Russia. What are the chances, you think, of...
Nothing less than nothing. There is war.
Yeah.
Russia started a war, and now not only against Ukraine, but also against Poland, against Romania, against Estonia. It's Russia that fights the war. NATO is reluctant to respond, and no problem. Let them fight and see who is stronger. I'm sure NATO will be much stronger. NATO can defeat Russia within weeks.
Why do you think there is such
If there is
hesitancy
a war,
from
let
NATO?
it be a war.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay. Do you think an all-out war really is the solution?
Oh, yes. It will be a very quick solution and everything will be peaceful few weeks after that. NATO should destroy air object on the airspace of Ukraine because Russia does it already. They kill civilians every week.
Yeah, but then also these NATO countries are deterred by the nuclear capability of Russia, which has been, like I said, a deterrent.
NATO has much more nuclear weapons than Russia. Even on that, they shouldn't worry about. Russia is not going to use nuclear weapons knowing that NATO has much more nuclear weapons. Even on that, there is no equation. There is no worry. We shouldn't fear. We shouldn't talk about nuclear weapons because Russia will never use them. It's suicidal for Putin and for Russia to use nuclear weapons. So that's not a deterrent. NATO should go ahead with conventional weapons, obviously, and deter Russia. Simple.
All right. Professor Popovsky, thank you very much for joining me and sharing your insights into this development. Meanwhile, we're getting some breaking news. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that talks with Syria are making progress, raising the possibility of peace with Damascus and Beirut. He cited Israel's victories against Hezbollah as opening unimaginable possibilities for peace with the northern neighbors. Netanyahu noted that contacts with Syria have shown certain progress, though a final agreement remains a future goal. Netanyahu is scheduled to convene a meeting to discuss a potential security deal as Damascus seeks to halt Israeli airstrikes and withdraw troops from southern Syria. The Indian government is assessing the impact of the Trump administration's new $100,000 H-1B visa fee, warning it could cause humanitarian disruptions for families. The statements come as the White House clarified earlier the fee applies only to new applications and not to the existing visas or renewals, and that this is going to take effect on 21st of September, which is today. Tech companies including Microsoft, Amazon and JP Morgan have advised employees to stay in or return to the United States of America to avoid uncertainty. India stressed the importance of skilled talent exchanges for innovation, economic growth and strong people-to-people ties. India dominates H-1B visas with 71 to 74%. China follows at 11 to 12%, while South Korea, Canada and the Philippines share around 1% each. Gautam Mukherjee is on the telecast with me. Gautam, what is going to be the immediate implication? Even as the White House has said that the H-1B visa crackdown of imposing fee of $100,000 is not going to be applicable to the existing H-1B visa holders. It definitely impacts the prospects of hundreds and thousands of Indians who at this point of time were hoping to get into the country to start their living, to start work, to achieve that American dream.
Yes, Megha, in terms of Indians wanting to go to America and become, if not Americans, at least more or less permanent residents, this will certainly impact hordes of people who might want to go there in future, because most Indian companies will not sponsor employees at $100,000 a year. Having said that, this rather, not very well thought out move is going to impact innovation if it tries to stay in the country. Now, in IT innovation, Indians are very, very prominent. So it is quite likely that the companies in Silicon Valley and elsewhere will move their innovation to offshore locations, and companies will therefore not particularly suffer because of this move. Let us understand that IT has
origins of starting in garages. So, when you move the innovation center abroad, there isn't much by way of infrastructure you have to move with it. You probably need some electricity and some space, and that's about it. So there are many, many places they could move to. Dubai, for example, other pretty much, liberal tax havens. Dubai doesn't charge any tax. It has excellent infrastructure facilities. The Americans would be quite happy to perhaps move over there. Indians are a hop, step, and jump away. And so the companies will not be stopped. But Indians who dream of getting a green card and a H-1B as a route to that, yes, they will be impacted. How long this will last with court challenges and so on is another issue. But I think the Trump administration is saying, okay, what we've got by way of, foreign high, these are high-level workers, is okay. We don't want more. We want, American companies to employ Americans. Now, Americans, yesterday I was looking at some of this. There's hardly 10% of Americans that go to the PhD level, some 20, 30% at the master's level. So they don't exist. They don't have Americans that can take the jobs of IIT people. So they're going to be very hard pressed. And the companies know it. They're not hiring Indians because they like them. They're hiring them because they are the most competent. 79% speaks for itself. And I think they will go offshore. Mega.
Right, absolutely. Thank you, Gautam, for joining me on the telecast, sharing your views. Meanwhile, let's take a look at some other developments that are taking place. Tensions rose in Manila on Sunday as thousands of protesters clashed with the police during an anti-corruption rally. The crowd was blocked from gathering in front of the presidential palace, leading to violence and barricades being torn down. The protests stem from a growing scandal over flood control projects, with more than 30,000 people marching along Manila's EDSA highway and thousands more crossing the country. President Marcos Jr. recently admitted some projects involving kickbacks. Despite billions spent on flood control, many Filipinos continue to suffer from flooding during the monsoon season. Marcos has launched an independent investigation, froze linked bank accounts and accepted his cousin's resignation. While urging peace, the president warned security forces would respond if violence continues.
Kami para manawagan na tama na, sobra na, tigilan natin ang korupsyon. Isa po ako sa nakaranas ng baha sa Valenzuela. May time po na lumulusok talaga ako personally. And ang masasabi ko po doon, sobrang nakakahiya yung ganung gawain, knowing na kami, yung tatay ko, factory worker lang, tapos nababayad ng tax, yung tito ko, yung mga magulang ko, tapos ito lang yung nakukuha namin. Walang maayos na plano para dito.
The people are very angry because they have been victims of flooding for all these years. And flooding has made their lives so difficult. And yet the discovery that all the billions of pesos that were supposed to help them, that were supposed to solve the problem, have ended up lining the pockets of all these corrupt politicians, government officials, and contractors. We are calling on government to hold to account everyone who is involved in that corruption. No sacred cows, no allies, everyone who is involved.
All right, on that note, I slip into a short break. Thanks for watching NewsX World.